Hello everybody, my name is Lynn and welcome to this new release video. Happy 16th day on quarantine. I'm starting to go fucking insane, but that doesn't matter. Let me tell you all the books that are coming out next month. I have quite of a strong list here, so let's just go in publication release. These dates are all according to Goodreads, so if anything changes, I'm so sorry, but we're taking that as a reference. On the 1st of April, we have Blackstone Heart by Michael R. Fletcher. Give me a minute because I can't see anything. So this is quite a new dark fantasy where we follow our main character trying to recover his memories through this super creepy dark trail. So, I don't know, it sounds fantastic. This cover is gorgeous. This is actually a self-published book and I wouldn't have heard of it if it wasn't for Holly from Holly Hearts Books, so thank you. Then, on the 2nd of April, we have The Loop by Ben Oliver. This is actually a young adult science fiction. In the world of The Loop, we have this person that is actually called The Loop. It's controlled by an artificial intelligence, and Luca, our main protagonist, is being delayed his execution only because he's the subject of these weird medical experiments. One day, on its 17th birthday, something goes wrong in the loop and weird things start happening. So, this sounds fantastic. I'm going to read this one for sure. This day, there are so many things coming out. On the 7th of April, we have, first of all, The Chosen Ones. This is the new book by Veronica. I don't have any personal interest on reading this, but maybe you have, so there you have it. It is a kind of mixture between fantasy and science fiction. And it's actually a adult novel, not a YA. In this one, we had these kind of super teenagers defeating the Dark One 10 years ago. So now we follow the world after the super victory that this was. And you know, young ones no longer remember Dark Ages, but we follow one of the 5 that defeated the villain, and they are kind of been through much trauma afterwards. And the trauma even becomes harder because one of them actually dies, and when they are all at the funeral, they discover that maybe they didn't quite defeat the Dark One. It actually doesn't sound that bad. Huh. Then continue with the 7th. We also have The Age of Witches by Louisa Morgan. This is a mixture between historical fiction and fantasy. This is a kind of weird book. I think that we will have to read it to actually get a really good summary of it, because we follow 2 different characters. One of them has used their powers for good, and the other one basically lured this rich guy to marry him. And this second woman is basically trying to gain fame for her family and making them one of the 400. It's kind of the city elite, and she's using kind of dark magic for it. So we have our main character trying to defeat her. Then in the US, I think that in the UK it's coming actually sooner, on the 2nd, because it's being published by Pam Macmillan. But in the US we have on the 7th A Time of Courage by John Wen. This is the 3rd book in his new, I don't know if it's going to be quartet also, but yeah, this is the author of Valor, and I read the first one of his books this year or last year. I think it was last year on December, and it was such a surprise. It was absolutely great as a fantasy. So I've been actually really wanting to read the second one, but it's such a dense fantasy that I need to have that moment of illumination and be just like, yeah, now's the time. I don't want to tell you much about it because this is actually set on the same world as the previous one, just a couple years later, so nothing here. But this is basically the adult fantasy with giants, warriors. It's kind of a super traditional fantasy, and it's just full of plot twists. You should read Malice by John Wen. Then another book that I'm not really interested on, but just to show it, this is Ruthless Gods by Emily A. Duncan. This is the sequel to Wicked Saints. Yeah, Wicked Saints. And I didn't read the first one. I wasn't really interested on it, so I'm not going to read it, but maybe you will enjoy it. Apparently it's really similar to the Grisha because of the relationship between what would be the character of the Darkling and Elena in this one. But yeah, I don't really know much about it besides that. Then we also have Bone of Grass by Emily Skrutskie. This is a science fiction LGBT plus YA novel. It sounds really cool. It's basically following this young boy who's trying to save his best friend, only to discover that he is the heir to this kind of really cruel galactic empire. So, I don't know, it sounds great. I'm definitely going to read this one. Then, the last book that I have here for the 7th is called The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I don't know. I think that this is going to be fantastic. This is a mixture between horror and fantasy. And this book is, I think, is going to be hilarious and it's going to be great because we follow a woman that has this book club and they discovered that their kind of new neighbor is actually a vampire and they have to fight him. I don't know, I think that is going to be fantastic. I can't wait to read this. We've made it through the 7th, finally. On April 14th, we have one of my most anticipated releases. This is the Book of Koolaid by M.R. Carey. The name might sound familiar because Mike Carey is actually the author of The Girl with All the Gifts. And I haven't read that book, but I'm really excited to do it. It's one of my oldest TBR books, but maybe if I like this, I will actually read it. And this is a new science fiction novel by him where we have this kind of more savage world, kind of post-apocalyptic, but not quite as much, because nature has kind of taken control. You're not allowed to go past the walls. So one day, actually, Koolaid has to go out there, but you know, things are not exactly fantastic behind the walls. So, you know, I love this kind of mysterious cities, kind of dystopia, where they live in this gigantic city and they have to go out because reasons, you know, they only need reasons, and I love it. I'm so excited for this one. Then also on the 14th we have The Last Emperox. I don't know, it's really hard to say, by John Scalzi. This is going to be the 3rd book in the Interdependency series. I'm really interested on the first one. I haven't read it. It's one of my TBR books, but I wanted to read his Omens work first. But I think that I'm going to jump straight into this because, I don't know, I find it more interesting. In the first book of the Interdependency, we follow humanity. They weren't able to do faster than light travel, but they discovered this thing called the flow that allows them to go actually faster than light. But this is not an static thing. It actually changes, and it can actually cut an entire planet from communication because it no longer goes through there. And I don't know, it sounds super cool, and I've been wanting to read this for so long. But yeah, now that I think that it's going to be completed, I think there are only going to be these 3 books. I think that it's time to get me through it. Then the last book that we have here is Elysium Girls by Kate Pentecost. This is a kind of a steampunk fantasy YA novel where we follow a game with these 2 goddesses, the one of life and the one of death. They are playing this game on this village, in order to judge humanity. I don't know. The cover is stunning, and this is one of the books that I'm for sure going to read this month. Oh, I said that was the last one in the 14th, but it's not. The last book that we have on the 14th of April is Girls Saves the World in this one by Ash Parsons. and it's basically about this gang of girls who's fighting zombies. I don't need to say anything else. This is of course a horror novel. Wait, why a horror novel? So there you have it. You're welcome. Changing the date to the 21st of April, we have Shorefall by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the second book in the Founders trilogy, and it's actually the continuation to Founderside. And the other thing that I know about the first one, because I'm not going to read the summary for the second one, is that in this world we have the ability to write on things, on inanimate objects, and make them do its thing, basically. So we follow this thief that is actually able to do this kind of magic, trying to make like this super heist of the century, for saying something. I have to read the first one for my owls on April, so maybe I will continue with the series in April. Who knows? Still on the 21st, we have The Ranger of Mart Sauna by John Scobram. This is basically a fantasy adult novel following these two siblings on their path for vengeance against the Empire, because this Empire basically slaughtered their father. So, you know, I always love a good revenge story. I'm actually reading right now the Seven Blades in Black book, and it's fantastic. Then we also have here the Deck of Almonds by Lynn Herman. This is the second book in the Devouring Grade series, and I read the first one, the Devouring Grade, last year? Was it last year? I don't know. I read it when it first came out. I was quite interested on it. I really love books with mysterious villages. I don't know, just like this really small town where something weird is happening. I don't know. I love that kind of stuff. So I quite enjoyed the first one. It's more of a fantasy than anything else, but we have these different families. Each one of them has their special power, and they are basically trying to keep at bay this beast that lives in the forest. And I don't know, I quite enjoyed the first one. It wasn't the best book that I have ever read, but quite entertaining. I actually hope that we have some answers here, because the first one is only full with questions. So my rating on the first one is probably going to change depending on what happens in this book. Then we also have here Raise the Sands by Sarah Beth Darst. If the name sounds familiar, it's because she is actually the author of The Queen of Blood. I think that the series is called The Queens of Renthia. And I have the first book. I don't have it here, but I have it on my house, and it's been on my TBR for like a year or something, and I've been quite interested in reading it lately. But you know, this new book is basically a standalone about this race through the desert. I know, it reminds me of like, I don't know how it's called in English, but this film basically, Cenos de Fuego. I don't know, maybe you're interested. Then I have here The Silence of Bones by John Hur. This is kind of a historical fiction mystery YA novel. This happens in the 1800s in Korea, and we follow this investigation of this noblewoman's death and the relationship that is building between our main protagonist and the investigator, until the point that our main protagonist is basically accused of being the prime suspect in this investigation. So it sounds really cool. I love Asian-inspired books in general, but more when they are set in just like older times. On the 23rd, we have Queen of Coin and Whispers by Helen Corcoran. We follow our main protagonist. She's basically being crowned queen of this kingdom, and this land is not precisely going through their best times. They are bankrupt and everything is misery, basically. So she's trying to get everything together, and for that she's going to use the help of her new spy master, Zania, and she's going to be tasked with investigating the death of her father. It just sounds really good, actually. On the 28th of April, we have Incendiary by Zoraida Córdoba, and this is a YA fantasy story. I don't know if I have ever told you, but I link all the books down there in the description box. I'm going to link especially this one because it has such a long summary. Basically, our main protagonist was kidnapped when she was a young girl, but now she is in charge of one of the Whisperers, which are this kind of rebel spies working against the Empire. Something like that. But yeah, it seems quite a complex book, so check out the summary down below. On the 30th of April, we have The Girl and the Stars by Mark Lawrence. This is going to be book 1 on the Book of Ice. This is actually a companion sequel series to the Red Sisters trilogy. Well, the Book of the Ancestors trilogy actually it's called. I have only read Red Sister and I haven't finished the series yet, so the only thing that I know is that it actually follows one of the characters from the first book. Actually, you know, this kind of ice nation that I don't really recall the name of right now, but yeah, that's the thing that I know. And you know, it's a Mark Lawrence book, so it's going to be phenomenal. Then at last, also on the 30th, we have Goldilocks by Laura Lam. This is actually a science fiction adult novel. We are basically set on this earth that is going to die because of contamination, pollution, you know. So they're preparing this expedition to go on space with all these women. I don't know, it sounds cool. I really like space expeditions, and they're actually trying to steal some ships? Something like that. I don't know, but it sounds good. And it's a science fiction novel, so I'm going to read it. That's where basically all the new releases are coming out on April. So if you're interested on any of them, just let me know and we can check them out together. But yeah, that's going to be all for today. I really hope you enjoyed it and I will see you in the next one. Bye!